anything connected to her should be uprooted because it's like a cancer. It just spreads. There's a concept in psychology.
You know what they say about keeping your enemies close, right?
Right.
Ready to check?
All right, sorry about that. Our tasers are so ass, Svensson, compared to what they used to be. Like when I was around, I swear there were
right
3
after
times
you
the
left,
range.
yeah, probably about 4 times even. Yeah, I mean, nowadays it's like you reach out and touch him before the taser hits him.
Yeah, I swear. I swear if I wanted to punch him, I would have hit him before the taser would.
So what do you think about Slacks?
I think Slacks is, I think Captain Slacks is really, really good. Very knowledgeable. Young. I mean, this kid is like a damn child prodigy. Okay, he knows a hell of a lot about police work. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He has the right ideals. I think we're cut from the same cloth. You know, he sees police in the same way I do, and I see a hell of a lot of myself in him, you know, but he's just young as shit. I mean, he just don't got the damn life experience that I got.
He's like naive?
Naive it's
a loaded term, yeah.
It's kind of loaded, but it's also not a bad way of putting it, because I feel like he and all the captains are like this. They are 100%, no matter what happens, they stand by each other outwardly. When they are in private, not that they stir up any degree of distress or something by their opinions in private, and those opinions are different publicly, but you can tell that he feels a certain type of way, or you could assume he feels a certain type of way. You know, when something is presented, it's presented as like, oh, the captains made this decision. This is our decision as a group, and it is, we all agree with it.
Yeah, but you gotta respect that, right? They're having each other's backs, they don't look weak.
Something that most people look at as something that is a show of strength, showing that, oh, our leadership is strong, we believe in each other, we believe that we're making the right decision, and even if we have our disagreements internally, you know, we're all together in this.
Yeah, you can't like pick them apart, go to mom, go to dad if you don't like the answer you get from the other one, right?
Exactly. However, the issue with this is when it's done in a way in which the decisions that they are making as a group are incorrect. So if you have a 2-3 vote on some shit, I'm assuming, I don't know why any captain would be greater than any other captain as far as voting goes, you end up in situations where inevitably you might make a decision that most people don't agree with. And when you make enough decisions that most people don't agree with, you end up in a scenario where the captains now, all 3 of them as a whole, end up losing the trust of the people, the subordinates. I think one of the issues here is, and this is basically what turned everything into a disaster in the last few days, the insistence on Cleus Cornwood needs to be investigated for a murder charge against Donald Bush the 23rd.
Yeah, what the was that about?
Because literally everybody who is a lawyer in the city said this is the dumbest shit I've ever seen in my life, and he did not commit murder. Like, get a life. Yeah. Look, Donald Bush the 23rd survived by Donald Bush the 22nd, who was running around the city a couple days ago talking about how Donald Bush the 23rd deserved it, and thank God he was killed because he was a terrible person.
Well, and why'd you shoot him? What happened?
He stabbed Tony Andrews in the chest, and then he got mag dumped by 7 officers, and then
what's the problem with that if he stabbed Andrews?
The problem with that is everybody gets real damn upset about everything. Now, I do agree that I made him. Look, you want to dap me, you want to give me a strike point, you want to give me a demerit for. I did call a suspect down, and I was reloading my weapon, and I gave him 1 more. All right. Now I didn't shout and declare 1 more for Sam Bass. But look, I've heard the stories. Now it's great hearing that. Because hell, I missed y'all. You know, whenever I left, I didn't want to leave. You know, it was just I just had to go back to the farm.
So it's a murder because you gave him another bullet. He's already dead, right?
Well, right. Well, they claim that he. Well,
he's still moving.
I mean, look, you got a number of situations here where like I'm just firing away and he's flopping around shit. I don't know, right? But by the time that I reload, and I'm, okay, suspect, you can tell, right? But you don't know if he's playing possum, right? Like you've seen some.
Listen,
you and I are a lot more experienced than some of these other folks, right? Like, you know how people play possum and they do some bullshit, and you never know, right?
Listen. If I could be honest with you for a second, I'll level with you.
Yeah.
Because you've been honest. What's 1 bullet versus 100? If you're trying to kill the guy to stop the threat, why does it matter how many bullets you use? Why does 1 extra bullet make it murder versus the initial 10 or 20 or whatever?
Right.
Like, I mean, maybe it's improper procedure to waste ammo and to defile the body. That's not murder. An extra bullet doesn't make it murder. I mean, maybe you get like DAP for it.
They gave me 5 DAPs.
For that?
Yes. That's the thing. This whole thing escalated. We always talk about de-escalation and all this kinds of shit. And I've made the example because I'm part of the old guard. Oh, well, this is how things, the old failed PD and all this and that. And they pull a whole bunch of bull and they lose the city. I don't mean to be arrogant or whatever. How do I walk around all day and have almost everybody I interact with talking about how, oh, I'm their favorite police officer and, you know, I'm one of the most loved people in the city and this and that? It's because I'm a police officer with a lot of power and I have a lot of going on, and they know that, and I take the time just to talk to people.
It's a little ironic they call it failed PD when it's literally failing PD. Like, what's the difference?
That's literally what I said. I normally keep my wits about me, but I did, I lost my head a little bit recently, and I said some shit that I don't necessarily regret because I believe most of it, but maybe I shouldn't have said it in the way I said it. I'm now on my back heels. I'm getting targeted for shit. You give me 5 DAPs, 10 making an indefinite suspension, 5 DAPs take me to 9, and then I get 1 additional DAP because Brian Knight lied on a report.
Classic
Evidence.
Brian Knight.
Hey, that's why we call him lying.
No, I fired his ass, right? I mean, well,
Good.
I was going to, but he quit in the middle of the fucking panel.
So I went from 9 to 10 into an indefinite suspension, and this was all given to me weeks after it happened, and immediately after I'd spoken with the mayor about, hey, what's going on with the PD and stuff. So I told him, hell, I'd meet with him, and I met with him with Flop, and in fact, I invited Captain Slacks.
Oh, Flop?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Wait, what's wrong with Flop?
I mean, what's right with them, you know? We used to ban saying that name at meetings.
Really? Why is that?
It's just the way he is, you know?
So anyway, that's where we're at with that. We met with him. I invited Slacks, but we couldn't actually make it happen. We said we'll continue after his, the mayor does this nerd shit. Dungeons and Dragons, I don't know. So the mayor had to leave. He said he'll come back later. But I got hit with 6 DAPs going from 4 to 10 after the meeting with the mayor, which I told Slacks about and I invited him to. Look, I'm kind of over a lot of this, by the way. I'm just letting you know the process in which how I was treated.
Just the facts of the...
Immediately.
Yeah.
Right. I ended up getting indefinitely suspended. Also, these 6 DAPs were applied to me several days, maybe 3 days, before my original DAPs from 60 days ago were about to fall off. So they waited a few weeks to apply these, but also they sent it, they pulled the trigger after I met with the mayor. So
do you think that was malicious to like prevent? So how does that work exactly? Do DAPs fall off from the time you get them or when the last DAP you received came through?
So each DAP is individual and it falls off from the time you get them. The DAP system is horrible and it blows my mind that they changed it, but it's like some bullshit fix just to make people feel like things are changing, but they made it more complicated. I say the word DAPs so much, I'm getting exhausted from talking about it because this has been a topic of conversation for two months.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but it's like 6 to get a suspension, 10 for a review or whatever.
I think
usually reserved for termination.
5 and then 524 and then 10 for indefinite.
Basically, we've just condensed the amount of strikes. When we had it was 30 strikes for a day suspension. Beyond that, it was like indefinite review and type shit.
Well, the thing is they last a very long time. And
60 days is pretty wild, I heard.
It should be 20 or 30 maximum. This sounds crazy. I wouldn't even want to be the commissioner, but I would come in and I would tear the shit.
Who do you think is going to be the commissioner? You're close to the mayor, right?
He hasn't told me who he's thinking about. My personal opinion is that it should probably be Barek or Ruby York.
Really?
Yeah, I think Barek, Ruby. I think honestly, I could do it. I really do. I don't know if that's a position that I would really want. I could do it, but I would really want to do.
I'm going back to the captain. What do you think about Turner?
I'll tell you, if you were to ask me this a month ago, what I would have said is I would have said Turner should have been chief of police, but he is not around enough. I think that may change. I have a lot of respect for Turner, and I think he does things a decent way. He gets it, as opposed to Captain Ruth, who I think is a literal cancer of the department and should be uprooted entirely, and anything connected to her should be uprooted because it's like a cancer. It just spreads. Some people may think that's a little bit aggressive. I'm gonna call a spade a spade. I dislike the fact that Turner believed I should be fired for some had no idea about, and he just probably listened to Captain Ruth and what she had to say. Slacks is the only captain that voted in my favor. And also, at my panel, at my review, there was no Shift 2 senior. There's Aldo, who I barely interact with, in Shift 1.
What do you think about Aldo? I mean, I'm kind of skipping Ruth here, but I heard he got interim, and some people compared him to Ruth and said he was like same.
Okay, so you got Captain Ruth, Captain Ruthless, and then you got Aldo Jackson, who's basically like She Ruth, is like it's
Diet Ruth.
Yeah. Well, I would say She Ruth more than likely.
Okay.
You got Ruth Jr. That's DeRollo. I mean, I would say that's the big 3.
What's your take on Aldo?
I think it's kind of odd. Captain Ruth had Aldo come to my review as an additional member of the panel. There was no senior that I interact with regularly at the panel. She had Aldo come instead, and then she suspended herself when the heat was on after talk about this murder charge got out. After she suspended herself, she put Aldo in her place. I mean, how does that look to you?
Depends what you think about Aldo. I mean, it sounds like he's someone that she trusts to do the same she was doing, whether that's good or bad.
Exactly.
It's up to you, you know, how you feel at Ruth.
She's been out to get me since day one.
What do you think that is, though?
She hates everything about the old PD.
I've heard that, yeah.
I mean, I came in and got dapped for a bunch of that I didn't do. She took everybody's word over mine. The amount of times I've been dapped for that never happened because somebody said some shit, or oh, the fat cop did this. Oh, the big one. Like, Wade ID is crazy.
They're just taking civilians' word for it and dapping you up?
It's other officers. I'm telling you, it's shift one causes so many problems because it wasn't like this at the beginning, but there is a culture established in shift one. It's like children. They're tattletaling. It's like fifth graders. It's crazy because the two seniors that I think were promoted first over any other seniors, DeRollo and Aldo, and I thought Aldo was great, but recently Aldo has been weird as shit. And I don't know why, because I always thought Aldo was great. And I talked to him a lot, but I didn't actually get to interact. Like, we didn't get to work together so much, but I would talk to him about shit. We seem to agree on a lot of that we talk about, but then we don't actually get to work together. And he voted on firing me, and I'm like, hello? I got dapped because he gave me a softball to introduce myself as a sheriff after I got a dap for calling myself sheriff as a joke.
So you saying he set you up?
He set me up, and I called him out on it in the meeting. You know what's crazy? We had a review. Ruth is talking about how I would overstep her. I wouldn't respect chain of command and shit. But I'm telling you, you know how people in the city are. There was a day where I was gone. Entire city turned into disaster. Massive failure in procedure against Mr. K. He was shot in the head. He did not test GSR positive. He was frisked. They found a gun on him. There was a report that there were shots fired. There was a report there was a gun. There were multiple people at the scene, but the only two people that got GSR'd were Rami and Mr. K. And the other guys who reported, hey, Mr. K has a gun, said he had a gun and ran off. I don't even know who the witness was. They said the witness didn't want to testify in the case. The fact that the witness didn't want to testify, that Mr. K had a gun in the first place, and the fact that all this shit happened, I would not have pressed that charge. Like, you have to use prosecutional discretion. So I'm talking about two separate problems here, right? Whole thing led to an improper raid that Captain Ruth pressed. She was the captain, and I will listen to her, and I did all this shit. Mr. K was screaming. You know how they are, right? Criminals in this city are crazy shit. And it turned into a disaster. And the only person that was able to communicate with Mr. K was me.
Because you have like a rapport with him.
Right. But how do you build that rapport? By treating people in good faith. You might have one interaction that you get to have with somebody, and that interaction can last a lifetime. This is going to be some crazy shit. They wanted to push this murder charge on me, right? I yelled at them for, or I didn't yell at them. I stood up for myself when they said I was skipping the chain of command and said, I'm sorry, that's never going to change about an officer is getting berated and mistreated, and I ain't going to step up and say some shit to stop it, and we can get a move on. And y'all
Who's getting mistreated?
Captain Ruth and Vivian Gray, and that whole situation probably went 2 hours faster because of me. And if I had really taken over instead of kind of pussyfooting around because I was worried about hurting, Captain Ruth's feelings or hurting Vivian Gray's feelings about, I don't want to be like, I'm not trying to push y'all out here and actually overstep command, so I didn't do it. But if I did, that shit would have been done in about an hour tops. And she dapped me 3 times for that.
What was the articulation on that?
Because I was overstepping another officer's scene, and even when another captain was there.
Were you like disrespectful, or?
No, she said that Cornwood was making it worse. Well, I'm sorry, ma'am. I cannot control him saying Cornwood is the only good police officer. Cornwood is the only good cop. You're a police officer, so take it on the chin and just look. Okay, he said some bullshit, and your subordinate is backing you up. Why are you getting all butthurt about it? There's a major issue with the entire culture of Shift 1, and it starts with her. Now the problem is Captain Ruth as a person is actually somebody who would normally work in a PD like this, and in some ways would actually be very good. However, when she is at the top of the food chain, and when she has too much with no checks and balances, it causes some devastating problems. And people have been mining Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, all this crazy shit that we have basically no research on because our top investigators all got dapped because they were pressing too hard, so they dapped them to slow them down a little bit, and now they're too scared to investigate. And I'm talking about Denzel and Aziz. I don't know if you had a chance to talk to them.
No, I heard about them, but I do want to talk to them. I don't know if they will, because they're not. Well, Aziz is still a cop, right?
Yeah, he some of his daps recently fell off, but I think he hit 9 at one point. Menu of daps are fair, and some people might. And so, but that's because some people are like, well, they're fair because it says so in the rule book. Who writes the rule book? There's a concept in psychology. I'm trying to remember what this is called. How could Cletus know that? Cletus is a genius. Because you have to self-insert to be a cop in 4.0. That's why. I can't remember what it's called. But basically, there's a concept of psychology. You know, as you get older and you learn more about how the world works and your like free will. You do things because you're like told, hey, this is right and this is wrong. And then the next level of understanding is you do things not because you're told what is right or wrong, but you do them because you believe that they're right or wrong based on a certain like type of moral compass. You have the judgment and the wisdom in order to be able to do that. Now, people look at this two ways. You know, in one way you look at it as like, oh, you know, we're soldiers in the damn army here, and we have to do what we're told. And sometimes you do. And I think part of having that understanding of doing things because it's right or wrong, right, because of your moral compass, part of your understanding is, yeah, you know, sometimes you do have to just kind of do because that's what you're told, because the ends justify the means, essentially, right? Like, we have to do that to keep everybody on the same page. I get it. But then there's the other side of it where people look at it when you're looking at everything and questioning everything, people see it as insubordinance, right? Because you ain't being a damn bootlicker. There is a major difference between insubordinance and questioning the procedures that you do in order to better the entire program and the whole organization from top to bottom. Go ahead.
I got a question that's like bothering me. Why do you like Barek?
I think Barek and I both see principles of leadership very similarly. I think Barek is well respected in the organization, and I think that Barek has the means to be able to communicate in a way that people will follow along with and respect.
What do you say about people that, you know, point out he's shift 3 and they don't? The most important time zone in the shift, he's always been shift 2. It's when the most crime happens. It's when the most politics happen, etc.
Who cares? I mean, that's something. He's the only. I think if you're talking about availability and time, there's two people that are even remotely close to being available, and that's Barek and myself.
What about McNulty? I've heard good things about him. He's like a strict patrol officer, right?
McNulty is an unbelievable field officer. Yeah, patrol guy.
I agree. It sounds like he fucking hates meetings, and that's just not going to work for high commands.
Right. And
what about Bones? I got a bias. He's my protege. You know, I trained him up. I was his mentor.
I'll tell you directly. I love Bones. He ain't there yet.
In what way?
He's not a listener.
How about Ruby? You mentioned Ruby too.
Ruby is a listener. Ruby is phenomenal, and I have one of the highest opinions of Ruby York. She is a fantastic FTO. I personally believe she's good at de-escalating, but I've heard from others she is not always, and I think it's just because she's New Zealish and people don't understand maybe her sense of humor or something.
You think Turner could be good if he was separated from the captains and promoted above them? It sounded like you had a good opinion of him, but you think...
I did, but I don't know, because he's been gone for like 3 weeks. I would have said Turner, but I mean, he wanted me to get fired for some... I didn't. I mean, come on. I would still consider Turner for a chief of police type of position, but as commissioner, the captains don't realize we live in a separate world than the rest of the damn city lives in. If I'm sitting here getting dapped for wearing a hat, or I have my vest on, Aziz got 3 daps for wearing a vest in a scenario that he shouldn't have had a vest on at the beginning of the city opening up. Ain't that insane?
How's that even possible? I mean, everyone's wearing I think everyone I've seen today is wearing a vest.
Because it changed. Because they changed the rules because they're like, okay, we're getting attacked left and right. But they're treating daps like strike points and handing them out like candy, but they're way more impactful. Oh my lord, I completely forgot about this. Oh, he was so mad and they wouldn't change it. So the day after he was dapped, they changed the rule and they didn't repeal his daps. People are just dumb as shit. I'm gonna keep it real. Okay, and we don't have we got some folks that that have some experience here. What I was doing years ago. I mean, hell, I was a senior captain. We only got one guy as part of our current PD who was a higher rank than me back then. That's Rhodes. Rhodes was undersheriff. When Rhodes and I get a chance to talk, we're saying the same shit over and over again because he gets it. Well, I don't know. I almost didn't come back, Svensson. I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. I did way more police work and way better in the last few days than I did in the 2 weeks prior. It's just one of them things that the impact of your actions is what matters. And until people get a grasp around, look, people talk about old guard this, old guard that. Hell, I'm 47 years old. I was around you know, 8 years ago. And I know, Svensson, I know you were one of those guys, but I think it's hard to, if people living in Los Santos nowadays don't see that we live in a different world today than we did 10 years ago or more, then I think they're just not, they got to open their eyes. Am I wrong?
The more things change, the more they say the same. I mean, if I can be blunt, a lot of the issues, the broad issues, are things Los Santos faced as long as I've been here, you know what? So 5 years since I left office, and then I was in there for 7. Oh. I mean, I see a lot of similarities in the issues that are being faced, a lot of trials and tribulations that many different iterations of high command have tried to tackle.
Right.
You know, in a lot of ways, I commend the effort they're making to try a new approach. But it sucks to see them falling for the same pitfalls that Bob Smith or Vladimir Raven or Jack Ripley or myself, you know, so many different people have tried to do it. And it's a real shame they haven't learned any lessons from it all. I think if a civilian and a criminal walk in and they both got the same issue, you got to help the civilian first, because ultimately only one of them really is only one of them is not going to kill you in a dark alley, right?
Right. There has to be an acting of a good faith that you need to have with people, and that is what makes people upset.
Good faith is tough, man. I remember that being a huge issue. Randy Wrangler, he never understood the concept of good faith.